Alex, cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to...
So loud.
Just cheers again. Another cheers.
There we go.
Here we go. Welcome to the Historyologist podcast.
Episode undetermined.
Today we thought we'd have a little chat, a little conversation, if you will, about the end of the ancient world.
Where do you call the ancient world in this particular regard? Are we talking...
Well, I'd like to emphasise first my expertise on this topic. I've read many Wikipedia articles, and I've even scanned one or two books.
Oh.
If that doesn't mark me as a world-leading expert, then...
And with my qualifications of sitting adjacent to you...
For me, when I say the ancient world, I'm talking about the Mediterranean, or, that sort of Near East. I know China, Japan, lots of different cultures and areas have ancient pasts. I just don't know much about it, and they all have funny names.
It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat, though. Like, was China there before we observed them? Were they not? Were they? Don't know. When I turn away, are they there?
Yeah. Did, America just pop into existence when Columbus sighted? It's like, there it is.
It's like, oh, the new world. So yes, that's our expertise.
So we agree, the only area of historical importance to everything is the Mediterranean/Near East.
Yes.
Or should we call it the Orient, just to...
I would like to say the Orient.
The Near Orient.
Asia Minor. Northern India suddenly started existing when Alexander arrived. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, when people were drawing those old maps and it just had the blank spot, or the blank part of unknown lands, they weren't just speaking metaphorically. It's like, we don't know what's there. They're saying there actually is nothing there until we go have a look.
We haven't collapsed the wave function yet.
Yeah, moving on.
So, you mean like Egypt, the Medians, Babylon?
Well, I'll give you a bit of context. I've always been fascinated by long history, you could call it, or how one historical period leads into the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the paradox is the historical periods that we sort of, you go, this is the ancient, this is the medieval, this is that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all just made up. There's no... people didn't... when the ancient world was winding down, they weren't just sitting there going oh, well, it's the year whatever, and so we're not the ancients anymore, we're the medievals.
It's like the Romans in Britannia, opening the letter from Emperor what's-his-name one morning and going, I forgot what I was getting there, but it's like, oh, shit. Oh, no, sorry, that's what I was getting at. He's open the letter and it's like, I need all the legions back now. And the person reading the letter looks up and goes, oh, no, we've entered the Dark Age. Or one day in, I don't know, in early medieval Europe, just kind of being like, it's not the Dark Age anymore. Snap. Oh, is it the Enlightenment? Not yet.
Not yet. We're still dum-dums. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that whatever is the ancient world is different to the medieval world.
Yeah.
Or to the medieval time period. So something happened along the way, and I don't know, I just find that transition very interesting.
Much of a dog in this fight do you think? If you're going to come up with just one word, just a hand wave, what's from there to there, and the big change, just Christianity will sort of fit that. Sort of because Rome sort of became Christian and then started, converting everyone else, and then the church lasted longer than the empire and still here, and then eventually, it's like paganism starts disappearing over the next several hundred years, 1,000 years. But then it's the morality changes, so there's a sea change in sort of...
I guess, but there's other parts of the world that weren't Christian that you would also call medieval that didn't have that sea change. i.e., say the Mongols
Yeah, okay.
or those kinds of people. They were very easily identified as a medieval time period.
I suppose with like,
Or the Vikings, say.
yeah, okay, yeah. Because I mean, with the Mongols, I mean, I think they're very much the way they were because of being right next to China. You know, like that.
Yeah.
Like the reason they had all those, like I know the Mongols had great engineers, but like a lot of that shit was from China when they took talent when they found it, and China being medieval, like, you know, like the Mongols would have got their siege engines, and you know, because China, what was going on over there was a lot bigger than medieval Europe. I know we drifted away a little bit with when we were talking.
Yeah, we've gone from how did the ancient world end to
China. But yeah, okay.
But anyway, I think you get my point. But so yeah, I find that transition really interesting, and I think you'd have to say that the ancient world ended.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, firstly, you could say the ancient world ended several times because there's several versions of the ancient world. You know, for our one or two listeners who listened to the last one, quick subscriber check. 6.
April, I hope you're one of them.
Yeah, if she's not, I mean, I'd get a lawyer or something. Like, yeah, I don't want to say the...
And it's like, you can pick the exact moment in the broadcast when his heart broke.
So the super ancient world, the Sumerians, Akkadians, you know, old time Babylonians,
Yeah.
and then it kind of I think you'd probably say that sort of all ended the Bronze Age collapse.
Yep.
I think that's your area of expertise, so you can talk about that if you want. And then, broadly speaking, then you had the sort of the ancient Assyrians, the Neo-Babylonians, the Persians, you know, the prophet Isaiah, all that kind of stuff.
Do you think the Neo-Babylonians, like it was I'm sure it's a distinction that they didn't call themselves that or whatever, but like, you know, the Assyrians referring to the Neo-Babylonians, like, ooh, why are you the Neo-Babylonians? It's like, shut up, man. You know why.
Yeah.
Like, shut up, you know.
I think that they would have more been like, they're like, hey, we're the Neo-Babylonians, and it's like, you speak Greek?
Yeah, fair enough. Whoa.
I think there's a big break when the Persians came on the scene.
Yeah, okay.
A break maybe not a big one, but a little break when the Persians came on the scene. A big break when the Macedonians, Alexander, came onto the scene. And then the final end of the ancient world. And it ends, I would say it ends in different, depends on which part of the world you are, but it ends at different times, is the end of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
That's when the...
Yeah, but when's that?
Well, I mean...
And which one?
If I was going to put a rough time on it, I'd say that in Europe, the ancient world ended in around 700
Yep, okay.
AD. In the eastern half of the Roman Empire, the interesting transition, I guess, is from the kind of ancient version of the Roman Empire to the medieval version, which the Byzantine Empire. But I think whichever way you cut it, by the time the Arabs sort of do all their conquest, that's it. The ancient world's done. It's over. I just think it's really fascinating. As you can probably tell by listening, I don't really know the answers to these questions.
Well, all right. So you very generously and cruelly set me up as being somewhat not knowledgeable on the Bronze Age collapse, when really the answer is, air quotes, sea people, and that's the best anyone can really come up with. But what are your sort of... Because I had, years ago, so for people who don't know the story, it's, you know, the way the great Dan Carlin described it as like communication, you know, the old world, it was huge. You had, you know, trade routes going everywhere. It was very well interconnected. And then slowly it's like the lights started getting turned off across, you know, in Europe, in communication, you know, with, you know, like the Greeks and stuff, sort of, you know, between the Egyptians and that sort of seed, and they knew something was wrong, and then eventually they would just It was like a coalition of tribes. They referred to as the Sea People, who sort of just went on a couple of decade boys through the Levant and kind of fucking ruined everything. And yeah, a couple of years ago, because there's a lot of ideas of I think like there's a group, one of them I think like they're called like Paliset, and I think that translates to like Palestine, so that maybe one of the tribes settled there. But I heard this theory a couple of years ago. I thought it was really cool. It might have absolutely no basis on reality, but it's history, so you have to believe it. But like the Trojan Wars. You've got like what's his name? Agamemnon and his 10,000 ships. He jumps across the Aegean. But unlike the really good movie with Brad Pitt, it doesn't kind of happen in a week and a half.
Yeah.
It's like a 10-year siege, right? Like, we know Troy exists, and this is embarrassing. Is it the Iliad? Troy's in that one? Yeah, cool. Double check. But like we know, like they think they found where it used to be, so they know it's true. But it's way back in like old Greek time, not the hoplites and sort of Sparta and Athens. You kind of think of their high watermark. Anyway, the theory is that like the 10,000 ships held in Troy, they've popped across to Troy. It's 10 years. It's a bit of a bummer. Don't need everyone there. And then, just sort of the boys, you've got the city locked down. And the other boys just fucked off for a bit and just went partying around like, woohoo!
Raping and pillaging?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes.
Yeah.
But, what you fail to understand, Tristan, in the past, that was glorious and probably moral.
It's an interesting theory.
It's like, well, the rule is, it's like, open your city and let us in. And you go, no. It's like, okay, well, we're coming to take your women then. That's it.
I've got one great fear listening to that story. And that's that having built up your Bronze Age credentials, you've spoken for a minute and destroyed them.
Yeah. Anyway, the fucking roast. I always like the idea. It was like, oh yeah, so the Greeks popped over and they messed everything up, and then they're sort of referred to as the Sea People. And it was literally just driving along to your house today to record this and listening to this thing, and it's like, no, the Greeks are invaded by the Sea People as well. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
not them.
They were cannibalistic rapers and pillars.
Well, if you're gonna commit, but yeah, I mean, don't know. I mean, the other explanations are like famine and war and whatever. These civilizations had been going a while. Maybe they decided to call it a day.
But here's something, I guess, to shift gears a bit, interesting to think about. If the end of the Roman Empire is the end of the ancient world, in Europe, the last emperor supposedly was deposed in 476 AD. And, you imagine the western half of the empire, which was parts of North Africa, sort of Italy, modern France, Spain, Britain, and, parts of Germany.
Yep.
In the decades before 476, that had sort of, the frontier line of the empire had been retreating back and back and closer to Rome. So by the time he was deposed, the empire was, Italy and, maybe parts of France or something.
Yeah.
For just the average person, like, let's just say you're some dude living in Lyon in France. Maybe you work for the local council or the equivalent of the local council.
It's just your 9 to 5.
Yep, 9 to 5. You hate your life, hate your job, you drink yourself to death every night. Would that person have noticed a difference? Like, would their life have been dramatically changed by the shrinking of the empire?
I mean, that's the thing. Unless you're dealing with, like, war or, like, you've got people on the other side of the frontier encroaching further in. I mean, like, you'd have security of, like, okay, so I imagine in these, Roman towns peppered around the place in the empire, you've got, your soldiery there. That's maybe not a great deal, but, there'd be enough to sort of, just in case, anything went down. Noticing there were fewer police around, and then there's less at market. I guess it's just your availability for just resources and stuff. Like I imagine like as the empire shrunk as well, like tin became, and it's just like, oh crap, all the stuff from Britain's not coming down anymore because that trade route's been, you just wouldn't be able to do it anymore. And you'd probably, if you didn't have, and you'd just adjust. And generation by generation, it's like,
I think the way it sort of works for these, because I don't think they would have noticed a difference.
No.
I was reading, I forget the name, but I was reading a book kind of about this not too long ago, and I didn't actually know, but most of the imperial structures remained in place after the empire fell. You had a lot of the bishops in place, you had a lot of the administrators for like a town or whatever, but it was just, the Franks or whoever came in and it's like, I think the first Frankish kings, they were made consuls of Rome by the Eastern emperor. And they're like, you're the emperor, we're a consul, gotcha, you're the boss, but, don't ask us to do anything because we probably won't do it. Like, it was that, so, that they were kind of, it was just like lip service, but that, so essentially they were an independent kingdom, just slipped into the imperial infrastructure. And so I think for people on the ground, life would have just carried on as per. It kind of reminds me of an analogy that I...
This bloody Shyamalan guy is all right.
Yeah. a good analogy that I'd heard once. If you imagine a scale, like a grey scale, so it's got white on the left-hand side and then black on the right-hand side. And, as you go from left to right, it goes... eventually gets more and more black and goes grey in the middle and then obviously becomes black at the end. When does it become black? And when does it stop being white?
I think it's just you get into like the Planck length sort of nonsense. You can just keep going into even more detail.
That's what I'm saying. That's what these people, when we say like, when did the ancient world end, or when did this end, or when did the empire end, or whatever. Yeah. That's what I think for most... the vast majority, if you're the emperor, you get your head chopped off or whatever. Yeah, fair enough. But if you're just like some dude, living in Spain or France or wherever, I think that would have been the experience for them. It's like, when did the empire end? Roughly around then. And, it used to be the empire, and then a couple of decades later, it's not the empire anymore.
No. Yeah, I mean, on a day-to-day, I don't think... look at it this way, I guess, like... most cultures, you're always sort of looking back at a great time, so we've got a lot of information at the moment, so you can sort of objectively be like, well, you can, thinking about the, living in the 1400s, it's pretty fun, but don't want to live there. Whereas, like, there is a tradition of, like, either through Rome or, Japan, or looking back to previous generations and being like, it was much better, we were a much better people, all that, right? Even though for a fact we know for a fact that's not the case. But there's a nostalgia for, I guess what I mean is, without all the records and stuff that we have now and all the archaeology and shit that's been done, it's this general, as I think it's a human thing even, just being like, today's shit. But,
So they might be talking about the golden age of Rome, say, whether that's Empire, the Republic, or whatever. But they're like, oh, yeah, and it was such a great time, but now it's not so great.
Exactly, and I think that is stacked on itself to infinity with everyone, like, in that whole spectrum of humanity, everyone just looking back and going like, oh. Like...
sucks to be me.
Yeah, exactly. The grass is, always greener kind of thing.
Because we can talk about it another time, but another really interesting sort of idea in this whole thing is when did people stop thinking of themselves as Roman? It's sort of depending on where you are, it's sort of, we won't get into it today, but it kind of ties in with the fall of the empire and the end of the ancient world is when...
Did they refer to themselves as Italians?
Well, that's part of the story, So that's a future episode. But
yes, I'm coming back.
But I guess we'll maybe wrap it up there. The end of the ancient world. I don't think we actually even really got to it. That
nope.
If you ever, that might be the theme of this podcast too. Have a question, and then just never answer it.
And I threw my hypothesis out and got smoked immediately. So
Yeah. My ideas were never challenged, so
Because I
Goodbye.
lack the confidence.